Hello and welcome to Chapter 8 in our book. Our topic in this chapter is Action Pack, and it does say Advanced Action Pack, but I still kind of think of it as, for the most part, basics. But some of the things that we're going to do here, if you actually kind of leaf through the chapter topics, is we are going to revisit this whole concept of creating controllers. We're also going to be creating a login engine for our application. We're going to add some filters and other things to our controllers, and then we are also going to use some helpers to help things operate a little bit more smoothly, and then finally adding a style sheet to really kind of ramp it up from this kind of like generic looking table format that we've been using. Not that it's bad, but it's not great. To something that looks a little bit more presentable, and you'll see how easy that is. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this chapter, so let's get started. I'm going to widen this out and then narrow it up again and move it off to the side. While we were on break here in class between chapters 7 and 8, I went ahead and closed all my prompts, shut down my web server, and closed all my files with the intent basically of reversioning my work. So I'm going to begin by going to the folder where my work is stored. I'm going to create a copy, paste it back in, and this one I'm going to rename, and I'm going to call it Chapter 7 Complete. Now the one thing that I did last year when we were working in this particular chapter, and I'm just kind of going to give you fair warning here that these zips that you see here are from last year. Doesn't mean that they won't work. They'll probably work just fine. But if you need a fresh starting point for the chapters that you're working on, here's an opportunity. So if you did stuff in like Chapter 5 that blew everything up, or in Chapter 7 that blew everything up, whatever the case is, I have completed versions of Chapter 6 and 7 here. If anything, you can also just use them to look at in order to determine what's wrong with your own application. So you could unzip it, look at the files one by one, and make sure everything aligns. What I might do, and I'm going to just put this out there, I'll only do it by request. So if one of you guys who's taking this in the fall semester of 2018 needs a fresh starting point, just contact me. And then I'll post it here. Otherwise, these starter versions should be enough for you. All right, let's go back to the book, and we are going to need our prompts up on the screen here. So I'm going to be preemptive, and I'm going to bring up more than one prompt. So I'm going to run the CMD command a couple times, and I think 2 is safe for now, but we might actually see need for a third window later. But for right now, I can tell that like the first command that I have to type is generating a controller, which we want to do from the standard prompt. So if you're in a Mac or Linux system, that would be the bash prompt, the $sign. If you're on a Windows machine, of course, that is the regular C prompt or whatever your drive letter is. Let's drop down to the root. Let's change into our blog folder as we normally do. And let's get ready to run this command. So the command is Rails generate controller, and I am being very silly right now, right? Because the command that's on the screen right now is not really the command I need to type, right? How do I know that? Because the name of it is controller name. That doesn't sound very meaningful. And then it's got a couple things in square brackets, so I know I'm actually not typing the right thing. But what they're trying to show you here is that if you want to generate a controller file, which is basically a class file, you just have to type this command followed by whatever name it is you want to use. You can append to it actions, so if you wanted to add certain things, or if you need certain things available, you can append those options on here, and it will create those things for you. Now, we do actually want to generate a controller. Now, the fascinating thing is we have already created a table for users, right? Where we're storing users, and we have them all linked up to articles and everything. We discovered, because of the associations that we put in place and all the validation rules, that we weren't able to even edit an article unless we had a user ID attached to something. And then when we went to try to create something new, we weren't logged in, so that kind of created a problem there. I mean, how do you set a user ID on an article you're creating if you have no way to log in? So guess what we're doing in this chapter? We're going to create a login system, but in order to do that, we will need a controller file that's going to handle those logins. So the one that's going to trigger when we're trying to do anything that's user related. So what we are going to generate is a controller called users. So if you go ahead and press enter on that, it should create the files that we see listed on the right, of course with our own unique names for it. Now at this point we need to take some time and start to go into some of these files and get them to do the things that we need them to do, or at the very least take a look at what they're doing for us automatically. First one we need to look at is AppControllers Users Controllers. So let's go there. So let's go to our blog, AppController Users Controller. And what gets interesting with these application structures, the way the files are, you do pretty quickly, if you work with this on a day in and day out basis, you know exactly where everything's located really quickly. And you see the pattern that develops over time. So all the user controllers, or all the controllers, of course, are going to be in the App Controllers folder, named according to what the object is named. So you see users controller actually is not called just users, it's called users controller. So it knows to handle traffic that comes in from the browser related to it. So what they would like us to do here is actually put in some commands. So we're going to go through and add all this code. So there's a little bit of code here to add. So let's do that like real methodically. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this first page worth and drop it in. And then clean up the format of it. So everything here should be indented at least 2 spaces. And then I want you to notice this. It says, before action, set user only, show, edit, update, destroy. Okay. So without going into too much depth on this, a before action indicates that something that happens prior to a certain action taking place. So we're actually triggering something before something else happens. So before we, let's say, create a new user, there's this ability to trigger other components that we need to bring in. Then we also have a method for new. Absolutely. Ask away.
Articles controller, we didn't have to do this, right? It was all done for us.
Correct.
With the scaffolding.
It was done with the scaffolding. So I think I know where you're going, Robert. So I think your question is, why didn't it do this for us here?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's a really good question. So the approach that we use for articles was what we call a code-first approach. So that means that we had created a class file, and maybe I should clarify the question first, because for the video. So the question is, why with articles were some of these things pre-created, and for this one they're not? Okay? So for articles, we first created a class file that set up, for example, and we didn't do it directly, we did it through the prompt, mind you, where we set up like the structure of what the table columns should be. And then when we ran the scaffolding, it found that model with the same name, built the database table for us, And because it's a database table, it assumes that we want to do the CRUD operations, and so it builds all the interface for it. This is different. Now I have a database table that already exists. I'm not building off of a model. I'm not doing any migrations to the database here. The table is already there. The table already has associations attached to it. So when I go to generate the controller, that's all it's doing is generating the controller. And the other thing that you have to be really careful with is what generate command you're running. So are you generating just the controller? Are you generating a model? Are you generating scaffolding, which does a whole bunch of stuff? See, and that's like where the terminology kind of like breaks apart. In this case, we're just creating the controller. But excellent, excellent question. Yeah, so really, you know, and it makes sense. It's like, why am I having to do all this manually? I thought this stuff did it all automatically. Well, yeah, it can, depending on the approach you use to do the initial creation is really kind of the answer here. So I'm just doing my indents so they match up with what I see in the book. It also helps us follow the Ruby convention of 2 indents. So everything should look sort of like this. That's the first page. So we have a method for new. We have a method for create. We have a method that you can see here on the next page for edit. If I can get my cursor to cooperate with me here. Then I'm going to copy in the rest of this code and clean it up. So edit is blank for the moment. Update does have some stuff in it. So go ahead and do your cleanup. Yes, we do have a private section here, stuff that's only available internally to the application, or to this particular file, really. And then your code should look like this. So go ahead and choose to save when you're all done. All right, the other thing that happens here too is we also have, kind of as a byproduct of all this, in our app folder under views, if we go to views, we now have a folder created for users. But you'll notice that this is also empty. That wasn't the case, right, when we did articles, right? A lot of this stuff was automatic. But remember, we had the code first approach, so it automatically built the CRUD operations for us, and it automatically built all the interfaces for it as well. Once again, in this situation, we don't have that. So here we are manually creating all the components that we'll need. So all the stuff that you saw in the folder for articles, so for new and edit and all that stuff, we have to create that. So that's what we're doing next. So here, where they point you to this particular file, you're going to see that file doesn't exist. Well, guess what we have to do? We have to create it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save it. So I'm going to do a save as. And then I want to make sure that it's in the right spot. So I want to make sure that I navigate to app, views, users. And they do give you the path right here, so it's not like a complete mystery. And then we're going to use that name that they have. So we're going to type in new.html.erb. Remember, ERB stands for Embedded Ruby. And then go ahead and click Save. The reason I'm saving it first is that way the Ruby color coding kicks in. Otherwise, if I wait to save till the end, I don't get that. Okay? And for you, it might be okay that you're not getting it. What we will do now is just copy the code from the book, Yeah, you can write your own. But we're just throwing in an H1. We're putting in a render command to bring in the form partial that we haven't created yet. All right. And then we're also providing a link back to wherever we came from. And that's going to be generated by the engine. So go ahead and do a Control S to save that one. Let's create another new file. We should be in the same folder, so do a save as, and we are. And this one's called edit. So edit.html.erb. Once again, real simple little thing. Once you have that in place, Control S to save. Moving on to the next piece, which both of the two files that we've created so far both try to render the form, right? The form partial that we know doesn't exist. So here we are now manually creating that form. I'm not going to type all this in by hand. I'm just going to copy paste it in and then clean it up. So you can do that. You can always go to the GitHub link too, and I don't know how precise it is to this, but you know, if you follow it, it'll take you right to where the code is. And I haven't compared this, but I know that sometimes the code that you get here is different.
Yeah, so I kind of looked at the previous one, the one that belonged to articles, and for instance, it doesn't have a form for, but it has a form with.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're catching the differences there, Robert. Very good. Yeah, because what Robert's noticing is like here at the top, the one online says form 4, and then, well, this one says form 4, but some of them will say form with. Yeah, and you know what? And sometimes it causes problems. So for right now, though, I'm seeing that I don't notice any significant errors or differences between these approaches. Do you? It looks okay to me. So I'm actually going to kind of be brave, and I'm going to copy this version. And the reason I'm copying this version is when I bring it to my text editor, hypothetically, and I say it very pensively, as you can tell, it should paste in a lot cleaner. So this one's going to be called _form, which indicates the partial, remember, .html.erb. So let's save that. And then let's paste in the code. So you see how all the indents and the spaces all came with. And then I'm going to go ahead.
There were quite a few differences with the partial that was created for the articles, if you compare. For instance, instead of add dot, it would have form.
Yeah.
And there were other differences.
There are significant differences, and you do have to watch it. In fact, one of the things that we're going to run into, and you know, I do this predictively, is we're going to run into those issues. And then we're going to be looking at those issues exactly to do the comparison. So the fact that you even notice that there's differences, Robert, kudos to you, because most people don't notice the differences until they have a problem and try to fix it.
Yeah, well, the thing was that actually I copied the articles form and then manually changed what I thought needed to be different, like users instead of articles. And I worked with that, but then something didn't work, so I kind of suspect I should have maybe done what you did.
Yeah, well, keep in mind I have a little more experience with this book. But you know, it doesn't mean that we get it to work perfectly each time. So, as you know, honestly, I think that's part of the fun of it. All right, let's assume that this is all correct. But basically, what we're doing, well, we are checking for those errors, just like we did last time, right? So we can trigger that, you know, that color coding and put some sort of message on the screen that's useful to the user. But then we are putting in fields for all the things that are relevant to a user account. So the user account name is the email address. That's why the first field there on line 13 is for email. And then from there we have two additional fields, one for password and one for password confirmation, so the repeat of the password. And then of course a submit button, which triggers it all. Okay, make sure you save this. And you got to remember that all these little weird things with the prefixes those are triggering what we call form helpers, or part of the library of functions. And you see these types of helpers in other MVC structures as well. So if you learn like ASP.NET, or if you do any, let's say, MVC coding, even in an environment like where you use Java as the back-end language, often you'll see these weird little prefixes they throw in, which help basically to get these things working. The next thing I see that we need to do is we need to go to our routes file. So in config routes RB, right here, and we need to add this line here to our code. So I'm going to copy that. So let's go to the routes file. So it's under config routes RB. Back to the root, config, and routes. All right, and then we're just going to add a line here where we're saying we have a resource here that is basically the users for the application. I'm going to get rid of this comment section. I hope you guys don't mind. And then I'm going to save this. All right, now we can actually fire up the server and give this a try and see what happens, and see if the stuff that we created is going to do what we think. So really what we've done is we've created kind of like two empty HTML form pages, right, where we have kind of, you know, the link back and then the title, so like new user and the backlink, those come from the partial HTML forms. And then the form elements themselves, including the buttons and the labels and the boxes, those are all generated by the form partial, which basically is the same form partial for both new and edit or update, or whichever one we created. So that's kind of the whole piece. Throwing in the route, of course, allows us at the URL to respond to the user's call in the path. So let's go ahead and get to the folder, run the application, and get the server running, I should say. And let's just do a Rails S. So now the server is running. And yep, it's up and running. So let's go ahead and bring up our browser now and do our local host 3000. And if you look at the URL they're calling us to, they just want us to go right to users new. So we can just type that in, or you could have clicked that link, honestly. So notice I'm just typing it right in. And if things work correctly, of course what's happening is users is grabbing, the user's controller is grabbing the URL call, because we're going localhost / users, right? So it's calling that controller. That's what that does, the first part of it. And then new calls that particular method within the controller called users. And then that one, of course, like we said before, this part and this part are written in kind of plain HTML, and then this is a form partial. All the form elements are being pulled in dynamically. And we could add a new user at this point. Now, I don't know if they actually want us to go through the process. It says when you actually try to create a user, you should get an error message. So should we try it? Sure, why not? Let's get an error message, right? And I'm not going to use that for a password, sorry. And then go ahead to click create, and it should someday soon give us an error message. Now the fun part is you can always watch the server here on the back end. Notice right here, forbidden attributes error, something in here, it's not liking what we're doing, right? And then when you get a screen like this, of course, that's the time to really panic, right? But it's trying to give us the same message that's normally hidden from us in the browser. I would argue that you really never want your users seeing this on their screen ever, 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 right? You should never write your applications to generate this. It should only be in the case of a catastrophic problem. But really what it's doing is it's just reiterating the same stuff that's happening here on the back end. It's giving you the same error messages. I'm going to go ahead and close that browser tab. All right, so what we need to do at this point is we actually, as they say here, need to tell it which of the things that we're passing to it are actually going to like stick in the application, like what is actually going to be dropped in. So we need to go in there and adjust in that user's controller file down at the very bottom, which you should still have open, hopefully. So here's the user controller RB file. We go right down to the parameters. We need to do some require for the particular elements that are going in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all these and paste them in. So we're going to require user, so that's necessary. That part of it is necessary. And we're going to allow email, password, and password confirmation to be passed from the controller. So those parameters are going to be allowable, basically. So go ahead, do a Control S and save that. And then it says run the server again. And I don't think I stopped it. Did I stop it? I get the impression I didn't. I think it's still up and running. And the command or the thing says and retry the user creation. So let's do that. Excuse me. So localhost 3000 hits the main page just fine. We're going to go to users, new, brings up the same form, no problem there. And then we're going to create our silly ASDF user with my silly password. And then go ahead and click create. And then hopefully it works. And you'll notice at the top of the screen, little message that got triggered. So we have the little message field or the notice field that gets triggered and that gets saved. So, okay, let's find out. Did it actually write it to our database? Let's go into the database and take a look. So I'm going to jump in, find our database. And we're going to go to the users table, and voila, we have a new user. And notice how the password is hashed. So you guys don't know at all what I typed. But you can tell that it's different from the other two, right? Okay. So kind of interesting, but apparently our password hashing system, even though it's using a low-end encryption, is still encrypting it, so nobody can just jump into the database and look at people's passwords. That's not allowable. All right. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do this little concept here called nesting resources. And what really we're going to do here is we're going to place comments inside of articles. And I want you to conceptualize why they're doing this. Because comments are an aspect of an article. This is really kind of the concept here. Because you get asked, okay, well, why? Why does it have to be attributed to articles? Well, it has to be attributed to articles because when you write comments about an article, it's relative to a specific article. It can't be to anything. It can't just be a comment hanging in midair. So that's why we're doing that. So we're making sure that those resources are an aspect of articles. So let's go ahead and find that file. And that, of course, is in the config, that was right there already, wasn't I? Yep, and I don't want to double click it, I just want to bring it into my text editor. And then inside here we're going to just add a do. We're going to indent twice, and then we're going to say resources comments. Just make sure all our syntax is correct. It looks the same to me. And then we also need an end statement. And then we're going to save it. Now what this enables it to do is to follow that link that we made in the database between the users, the articles, and the comments, and then allows us to loop through. So if an article, conceptually, right, an article might have one comment or it may have many comments. And this allows us to loop through all the comments we have attributed to the particular article that we pull up, and it's all there bundled together in the application and what we see in the screen. All right, so now that we have that piece in place, here's what we're doing. Again, manual work once more, right? Because when we created the comments model, right? So we really created a table that will hold comments. And we're going to pick up now right here at the bottom of page 156, and what we're going to do is now we're going to generate a controller to go with comments, because as we had the same issue with users where we didn't create a controller with it, we just created like database entries, and we did that all directly with the database. We have the same issue with comments, so it doesn't have a lot of the functional components that would automatically be built through scaffolding. So we're going to go ahead and run this command at our prompt. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in the right spot here, and it looks like I am. So I'm going to type Rails, generate, controller, and then comments with a capital C. And remember, this is just creating a file in the controllers folder, and you can see all the stuff it creates. Does it create, and I want you to look at this really carefully, it did create a Ruby file under controllers. And then it created this, but you notice this isn't a file, it's just a folder. It's creating a folder for the views, assuming that you might want that, right? But it didn't create any of the files that go inside. We're going to have to make those manually. Also created unit testing, helper methods, and of course the coffee script and SCSS stuff, shortcut ways to write JavaScript and CSS. As we move down to page 157, now we're going to discover that we're going to have to do some of the same type of things that we just did with the user controller, we're going to have to do with the comments controller, same type of action. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go into my folder, find app, and let's see, AppControllers comments, right? AppControllers comments controller. I do see I have the file, and I go in, and just like the user's controller, empty, devoid of any content. And once again, the why, since Richard's just joining us, the why is because when we did the other work and we did our generating of controllers and scaffolding, and that's really the more important word here, is we were generating models, we were scaffolding in some cases, and what that means is we were doing a code-first approach where our data structures were predefined in files that we then built automatically a whole structure to do all the interactions by just typing a simple command. Here we're working in kind of the converse, where we have the database tables first, and now we're building the pieces to help control them in the aftermath, and the pieces to help look at them and manipulate those database tables all in the aftermath. But the nice thing is we can look at examples that have come before. So once again, I'm looking at this and I'm noticing that we have this before action also listed, and if you read this one makes more sense, right? So before we trigger the comment controller to take actions with the comments, first we load up the article. That one's an easy one to read, right? That one makes more sense than the previous one. And then we will have a create, a destroy, and a couple little private methods here too. I'm going to give this shot again here with this GitHub approach. I'm going to go out to the guy's code page, and I'm going to pull the code up here, narrow it up a little bit, and then just kind of do a little side-by-side with it and see if there's no reason why I can't copy it from here. And the main reason I'm doing this, folks, is to save me basically from the hassle of doing all the little indents, because if I copy and paste from here, the indents will follow. The one thing I am noticing is it seems like the bottom part is missing, so I'm trying to scroll within that box, and you know what? It's just not there, right? He doesn't have the last little private method included. So now you have a conundrum. Do I go ahead and include that or not include it? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy all of this code, and I should be more careful in this. And really what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all the code with the exclusion of the opening and closing statement. So I'm going to copy that. I'm also going to double check, is this the same thing that we have here? So I'm kind of like really quickly side by side doing comparisons, and it looks the same to me. I don't know if you guys are seeing anything different. Okay, so I'm going to copy this code here and come back over to my editor and drop it right in. And it looks like it pasted in okay, but then I still see that I have this little piece here at the bottom that's missing. And we saw what happens in the browser when this piece isn't present. So I am going to add it in because I'm considering it required based upon my experiences. So I'm dropping that in, and I'm going to do a little bit of formatting here for cleanup, like so. And then I'm going to do a Control-S to save. Now, as we did before, we also have to create all the views. Now, what's kind of interesting about this is, you know, it's not that hard to create views, especially if you have a really clear picture of the stuff you're trying to put on your page. So when we were trying to like edit an article before, we would just put the command out there that said render form, and it would pull in the form partial, which was already created, and we just dropped it in. In this case, now we have to be a little bit more logical because we're freeform, right? So if I was working with an article and I wanted to make a comment on it, wouldn't it make sense to first render the article, right? So you put the article up on screen first so you know what you're commenting on. In fact, that might be helpful. Like if you want to like, you know, put a scathing review for something, it's helpful to like be able to say, right here you said so-so, and I really don't agree, and you know that way you have something to refer to, so I think that's handy. There's some title elements, some HTML elements, and then we also put in render article comments. So why would we do that? Well, you might want to see what other people said before you write your own, right? So if there's other comments already listed, let's show those too. So if there's like a conversation stream that follows an article, here's your opportunity to see that. And then notice the very last command. It says render, and it says files, comments, new. So what this indicates is that we're going to take what's going to happen here and we're going to push it out as a new thing. Now, keeping in mind that from this particular file, we don't have the CRUD operations available. We're going to actually be triggering through the URL the controller and the new method. That's what it's doing. Okay, so, but we need to create this file. So we're going to go now to our editor, create a new file, and right away do a save as. And we want to make sure we're in the right spot here. So I'm going to go up. So I'm in the app folder. I'm going to go to views. I'm going to go to comments, which we know is empty. And then we're going to create the file that's indicated. So we're going to create show.html.erb. And go ahead and save that. Now we can put any HTML we want in here, but the truth is that if we're kind of stitching pages together, and if you want to make a correlation here to like PHP or something, where the renderer is kind of like doing an include, where you're pulling in an object. But of course, when we're rendering article, that's coming in as an object, an instantiated object, which is pulling a single article out of our database, storing it in this object, and then we just say render it, put it up on screen. How are we putting it up on screen? Following the views that are set up for article already in its own folder. Isn't that fascinating, how this is working? So once you get the building blocks in place, you're going to find that you write these applications, and once you have the pieces built, then you're just kind of piecing them together. All right, so let's go ahead and save this one too. I think we talked that one enough. We also need to do a couple of little adjustments here, and I want you to notice that we have to go to like a little bit deeper level here. We're actually going to go to the application layout template for this next edit. So that's an app views layouts. And what's kind of unique about this file is the fact that this is the application level embedded Ruby file. So if I open this one up and take a look at it, you're going to see where all the beginning and ending tags of the whole application start. So this is the, the basic HTML page that's dished out to all the others. You want to call this your master page if you're used to ASP.NET, that's kind of what it is, right? So if I wanted to customize it, hard code HTML into it, hard code whatever I wanted into it, I can do that here. Absolutely can do that here. But we are letting all those highlighted tags, the yellow ones, to do a lot of the work for us. So a lot of these things are generated automatically by other parts of the application, including the style sheet links, the JavaScript links, and you have to remember here that every time we go to a page that's got its own view, because we saw this as we did the generate command, it creates its own CSS and JavaScript for every view, for every controller. So for every unique object that we have in the application, they all have their own style sheets in JavaScript. Not that you would maybe even use them, but this allows you to take those pieces and travel with them. So this is what's really cool about this. So if you create something really neat, you can then pick up all the files that are associated, move it to a different project, and the whole thing follows, which I think is just fascinating. Of course, the line 13, which is the yield, that's where all the content of the page gets inserted. So when we run this like show HTML ERB file, the code that we just added drops in right there. The stuff up in the header drops in from other locations automatically. They're all linked together within the application engine. All right. But notice that what we have to do here in the body section is we need to add a couple of things here. No, Richard, it shouldn't be. Richard posted a question online, shouldn't that show file be under articles? No, because in this case, we are working with the comments, and the comments, as all the different application components, have their own views. So when we were working up here, Richard, this render command, which pulls in the article, that is exactly what it's doing. It's going to the article, it's running the show from that view and pulling it into this interface. Then we're going to get a little bit of HTML, show the other comments that are available, and then trigger the piece that allows us to see the new comment form right on our page. So it's kind of like stitching it all together on the fly. But really good question, absolutely. So this part here, and I'm not sure if I did a Control-C on that or not, but I'm going to bring it over and drop it in. And you can see they're inserting that above the yield, like right in this spot here. So if you want to match up your formatting and stuff, go for it. Now, notice what they're doing is they're actually running this little command here that you can kind of guess what it's doing. It says content tag P. So what is it doing? Inserting a paragraph? Yes, it's inserting a paragraph tag in the page at the top that is going to have a class of notice. Now, Richard, or Robert, remember earlier you were pointing out the paragraph and how it had a class of whatever it was? Here's a spot where we are programmatically going to put a paragraph tag on a page and give it a class declaration. That's what this is going to do. You know, and it says, when do we do that? If a notice is present. So if we're populating a notice field on the page, this will automatically render the paragraph if it exists, but only then. Another thing that would happen is if we have a problem and we need to put an alert up on the screen, same thing. So really what we're doing here is we're conditionally creating paragraphs with certain class fields for styling in JavaScript or whatever we want to put in there that will appear at the top of the page and give us an error message or success message relative to the messages that we're generating elsewhere in the application. Okay, so that's kind of a neat thing. So go ahead. I just saved the PDF and not my text file. So save your text file. Make sure that work gets saved, otherwise you're not really getting very far. All right, now we've got a little bit more work to do yet, and I'm looking ahead at all the edits that we need to make. So hopefully we can get down to here before we call it quits tonight. So let's see if we can do that. So we made those edits, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the articles folder, and we're going to update the article partial, which is the thing that we're going to be calling here. So let's go to that file. So we're going to go to app views articles. And then I see, wait, I don't have that file, or do I? Well, I have article JSON builder. That's not the same thing. So I need to create another new file. Save as right away, folks. Make sure you end up in the right spot. Underscore article, so we're creating a partial. And it's article singular.html.erb. And then we're going to get all this code in there. And yeah, I'm afraid we're going to have to do this in pieces. I'm going to try the GitHub link again and see if that code's a little cleaner for copying. It looks a little bit better, so let's grab it from there. Just get that out of the way. Paste it in, and then I'm going to double check it. I'm not just going to take it at face value here, because if we have anything that is significantly different, it could cause a problem. And yes, sometimes those GitHub versions are different, and they're not necessarily different in the right way. So let's take a look at this right here. Here's where I'm finding a difference right now. Look at the delete line and look at the syntax, especially when you get here. You see the difference? Okay. So the question then becomes, which version should I worry about? You would think that a link in the book would take you to the same code that's in the book. That's what I would think. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with what's on GitHub, partially because I know it's going to work anyhow. But if I have a problem, this is one place where I might look. In fact, I could even be preemptive and come in here and just throw in like an HTML comment. This line above might be a problem. See page 159. So I'm just doing that as a courtesy to myself. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this. And if we run into an issue, that's one spot where we might look. Now we need to create this file, comment partial. And let's see how quickly we can do this. So you kind of get into a workflow after a while when you get used to it. And this is in the comments folder. And this one's called underscore comment. And notice how that's singular here because we're working with individual pieces. .erb. And then we're going to grab this code here. And you know, I think since I grabbed the last one from GitHub, I'm going to grab this one from GitHub too. Paste it in. Same conventions going on here, so mental note. And then we need this particular file, new. Once again, you need to create it from scratch. Save as, and then new.html.erb. And because that's in the comments folder, that's going to be the new file form for that particular piece. So for new, we want to grab all this code. Once again, going to GitHub for it. My mouse will cooperate here. Pasting it in and saving it. Now, in terms of what's in these files and why it's there, I mean, I suppose we should take a moment to talk about that. Notice that we have this special tag helper again, and we haven't really talked much about these, but this is basically an embedded Ruby command to create, guess what, a div, right? What are we creating that div for? See the syntax? We're creating it for a comment in the fashion of a loop. So this will display one comment if there's only one, but multiple comments if there's more than one. So hopefully that's clear. We're going to have an H3 there, which is going to kind of format it a little bit for us. We're going to have the name on the comment, the email address. What are these? Ampersand LT, ampersand GT. Greater than or less than. That's how you get the brackets onto a page without having them turn into HTML. So like one thing that you usually see with an email is like the person's name, brackets, and then inside the brackets their email address. So that's what that's going to generate. So it's going to say whatever that username is said, and then it'll link to delete, but it'll also show the comment and pull the article up based on ID, and then also allow you to actually remove the comment as well, which is going to be kind of interesting. So you're going to have like some controls that's set at the top of it, and then you'll actually have the part of the page that's just the comment itself. But above the comment, you'll have this ability to look at some of the details of it, and then also have the ability to remove things if you so need. If you look at the new file, this just pulls up a form that's related directly to the objects in the database that we're working with. We are using form helpers. That's why we have the little F dot in there that converts everything to HTML, and that's for programmatic control, remember. And then those have direct ties to the data structure on the back end. All right. Now, I'm noticing here that I don't know if they're actually making an edit to this part. So they got link to, delete. Yeah, they do want us to make a little bit of an edit here. So I'm going to actually collapse this down. And the edit that they're asking us to make is after link to, delete, instead of article, comment, path, and all this difficulty here, they're actually just boiling it down to this. So they're actually removing this command right here. So I'm deleting that. and replacing it with this statement here, which basically is treating it more as an object compared to the approach that we're seeing here. I'm going to go ahead and do a save. And I think that we should try it now. So I don't remember if the server's still running. It looks like it is. Yep, it sure is. So let's go ahead and let's just refresh the articles page here. Let's get this up. Okay, so it is up and running. And remember, what we need to do now is apply comments. So how is it we're going to get to this page? Well, we need to actually go into one of the articles is the answer to that. So if I pick any article, so I'll pick the second one. All right, and okay, so I'm seeing, it's not showing me the stuff that I'm seeing on the screen, right? It's not rendering that new stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is close that browser tab. I'm going to stop the web server from running. So I'm going to do Control-C, yes, terminate, up arrow twice, and then run the server again, and then let's try it. Let's give it a moment. Let's try our localhost 3000. All right, let's click on show, and then, well, I'm not getting that particular view. Now the question is, why? I might have to do a reload. And why is that? I did. That's right. And you know, the funny thing is with that particular issue is I do have to go to the Rails console to do the reload. So let's bring up the console. Let's try the reload command. Okay, it says true. Let's go back. Do I want to restart the web server too? Probably, probably, right? But let's try first without. Yes, it seems like I do. So let's stop the server. So these are some of the weird things that you might encounter. And there's a couple of other things that we probably should talk about too, but let's try these techniques. It's good to troubleshoot incrementally rather than just jump right to the solution sometimes. Okay, so that looks okay. Let's do a localhost 3000. All right, so now we have articles showing. And it's still, it's not giving me the pieces I need. So now I have to do a little bit of examination as to why it's not doing it. So, so really what it should do is it should show the article, right? So it should show the title like that, and then it should insert the comments. Correct? I mean, so now what we have to do, so here's my troubleshooting process in effect. The first thing I know is that I've created a bunch of new text files. And the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure, first of all, they're all saved. And notice as I hover over the tabs, it also shows me where they're saved. That should be okay. Okay, so I'm going to stop the server. I don't think we have any reason to need to do a reload from the console again. But I am going to go back really quick and just review some of the changes that we made, and then check those files to make sure that those changes stuck. So I'm going to check the routes file first. So I'm going to go to config, routes, make sure that those changes stuck. Right, that looks okay. Everybody's in agreement, I hope. We did add that piece to the user controller. I don't have that up on the screen anymore. Put that piece in, so I'm not worried about those pieces. Got the comments controller. Just doing our side-by-side comparisons here, and I see differences. So for example, here, you guys catching this? It's different here, isn't it? But when we operated this before, it seemed to be okay. But one thing I might do is I might change this. I might change it. All right. Comment save. This all looks the same. Once again, I see this functional difference happening. This I grabbed from GitHub, right? So should I try replacing these lines? It certainly isn't going to hurt anything, but I know from experience that sometimes these version differences can have like pretty weird effects. And just like, the simple things that they're doing, like here they're doing notice, like so. Oh, and I see another major thing. Notice here we have a before action, and here we have a before filter. I'm going to go with before action here and see if that does anything for us. Let's go ahead and save that. Is our server running? No. Now, what I'm trying to be really cautious about here is trying to make too many changes all at once, because then I won't know what helped. Right? I don't know if that's a strategy that you guys employ. Let's go ahead and reload this. And it still doesn't seem to be doing it. So I'm going to go back and examine more files now. And if we're working from the prompt, you need to reload. All right, so I'm just going to go through here just really quick and compare all my files to see where we're at. So the next one is show under view articles. This one's, and Richard, this is the one that you were pointing out, right? I think. Oh, he left. All right, so I'm going to check app views articles show. And I think that might actually answer a question right there, honestly. Well, sure enough. So here's what has to happen here, is we're going to get rid of all that. We're going to bring in our code from the other show file. This is this one. Paste it in, save it, and you know, my suspicion is there's the fix right there. Let's see if that's true. This is without reloading the web server, mind you. See if it even does anything. All right, let's go back. Yeah, I get the feeling I might have to stop and start the server. Let's see. Really taking a long time. Okay, but it worked. Now, even though it's showing this on the screen, it's still loading. Catching that? So what we're seeing here isn't necessarily right. Watching the output here. Aha! Okay, so I think I discovered the issue. Notice, this is why it's really great to look at your log files, because notice what it says here? You know, the div4 method has been removed from Rails. To continue using it, add the record tag helper gem to your gem file. So you're seeing that little command here? And then we have to do okay, so what they're telling me is that we're using a deprecated tag. So I'm gonna go ahead and find my gem file. So watch this little tweak that I do here. So I'm gonna go to my folder, right in the root, and there's a file called gem file without an extension. I'm gonna right click that, open it, and then somewhere in here, and I don't know if it's already in here, I'm just gonna like search. All right, so we're gonna add in here the little gem that it's indicating in that prompt. So gem, record tag, helper, and then this little symbol. And if I could copy and paste from here, I would. Let's see if I can. All right, and they work just fine. And now that I've done that, I also have to do this. And this is the part that will probably make it work. First, I have to save this change. Then I have to definitely stop the server. There's no doubt that we have to stop it now. All right. And then from the prompt, I'm going to do a bundle install. And what that's going to do is it's going to read that gem file. And if you remember this from the beginning of the class, and then it's going to look at all those gems and install the ones that aren't present. So it should find the record tag helper, and if I scroll up here, I don't know if it's installing anything. Okay, well it says everything's installed. It didn't seem to invoke that one at all. So I don't know if it's actually going to work, but we'll find out. Let's run the server again. And there it is. Okay, so that we at least got this far tonight is pretty huge. I know we stayed a little bit past ending time, but we did get it to show. So this is a great stopping point. We can stop the video and feel like we actually accomplished something because now we do have that form up. So this is where we're ending today, at the bottom of page 160, and where we're going to pick up next time. So I will see you guys next week where we're going to finish up chapter 8 and then hopefully start getting into 9.